Welcome to the Changing the Perception of Sales podcast. And today, I'm delighted to say we are joined by Jonathon Ilett. Jonathon, great to have you here.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you getting me on the podcast.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And as we always like to do, for those that are listening to this and might not have heard the name before, who are you, Jonathon, and what is it that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently, I'm in the process of leaving Cognism, so bit of free time at the moment. But so my name's Jonathon Ilett. I was the prior VP of Global Sales at Cognism. So started in its infancy. I was employee number 5. And over the course of 8 years, helped scale that from kind of a small 4-person organisation in London Bridge to a multi-office, I hope, like a good European success story, and built out teams across multiple different regions, had an absolute superb time doing that.
Love it. Yeah, definitely a success story, and I'm sure a name that the majority of people will be familiar with. We'll go into that journey in a bit more detail shortly in terms of kind of where it was when you started and where it eventually got to and the how. But employee number 5 would have been a small business at the time. You might not have known what sales was. So as always, what and why did you get into sales in the first place, Jonathon?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually wasn't even I'd done business at university as well, which you'd think would be kind of they would teach you about sales, and nothing during my course actually taught me about sales at all. But the reason why I did get into sales, it's actually a bit of it's a bit of a silly thing to have done back in time, but I was literally just Googling like what is the quickest route to get to potential CEO, and what the highest earning professions were that like kind of got you to that kind of level very, very quickly. And I think sales was like number 3. And obviously when you leave university, like it's, from my perspective at the time, it was grad scheme, recruiter, or entry level sales were like the kind of core roles that you would fall into. I wanted to join an early stage startup. Like I worked at an early stage startup in my university degree for our final year, and absolutely loved the pace of it. I loved being like more than just a number and actually having a tangible impact. So that was kind of the catalyst to get me into SDRing.
Love it. So I love the fact you literally just Googled quickest way to get to CEO of a business, and I'm really pleased that sales was on that list. You said it was 3rd. What were the other 2? Was recruiter 2nd and grad scheme top?
I literally cannot remember, but it was just basically a Google article that came out, and that was like, okay, sounds like a good starting point. If I can't make it, then I'll pivot into something else.
Yeah, well, praise the Lord that sales was on that list anyway. So you mentioned then you were the plan was always looking for an early stage business, and you kind of experienced that whilst you're at university. But What was that like at the time? Because being employee number 5, that must have, at the time when you were going into that role, must have been, scary, daunting, and probably would have been a lot of safer options that you probably could have gone for at the time as well. So what was that like, and what was it that made you really go for it?
Yeah, I think anyone who works in that kind of early stage, like pre-seed, seed organization, like it's a real challenge. Like you probably at that point haven't got a defined ICP. You maybe haven't got product market fit yet. So a lot of that kind of early stage, probably the first year, was literally just a testing ground. So we were testing like, okay, what persona is this going to land with? And for our products, that could have been marketing, sales, could have even been the CEO of really small organizations. So we were just testing messaging at that point and trying to define like what's a good fit organization that we know that we can sign at a healthy ACV that has a potential to renew into the second year. That wasn't a guaranteed very, very early on. But yes, it was a lot of like late nights and grind, and I think you're kind of seeing this re-emergence of that kind of philosophy coming from like Harry Stebbings now at 20VC, saying that like people like the 9 to 5 days a week probably isn't going to cut the next like unicorns coming out. And it was very much that culture, right? Like it was late night calling into the US, and yeah, I don't know if I've got the energy to do that now, but it was a lot of fun back in the day, and a lot of graft, right? And I think that kind of early employee base, that relationships that you have with that team, makes such a difference on the output that you've got. And for us, we were signing, if I think back, it was probably like 3K MRR a month. So probably 3 deals a month was like make or break for us to kind of get that next funding round. And in that context, like it makes such a difference, right? Every single person that's in that seat. Um, and yeah, it was super exciting.
Yeah, can imagine. I bet there was a lot of ups and downs at the time going through that journey. And just so I've got some of the kind of headline figures here, then. So you were employee number 5. By the time this will go on, you've left be over 500 globally.
Yeah.
In terms of financial figures, you mentioned then, obviously starting with the 3 grand monthly recurring revenue figures, but by the time you left, the 90 million annual recurring revenue. And from a personal perspective, joined as an SDR with not really any experience, and left in a VP of global sales position. If you look at kind of where you were from and where you got to, really impressive. But I should imagine it wasn't just a linear line that went all the way to 90 mil, 500, and VP of global sales. I'm interested in the ups and downs, really. So rather than how you got to that, I'm interested what went wrong, what didn't work.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? Like I think probably the biggest when we did fail, that was probably the things that made the biggest difference to the trajectory of the success of the company. So, like there was multiple things that probably doesn't get publicized. Like the first one's like we went up market way too quick when we first started, and there was loads of lessons behind that, right? Like putting your best foot forward, not putting all your eggs in one basket. So like when we first started, we hired a lot of external reps into enterprise, and we didn't have the enterprise motion like succinct. We didn't have organizational agreement across products, C-suite, and sales in terms of like what our enterprise offering was going to be. And I think sales was very much of the motion. Okay, we need to start hiring enterprise people because we need to get those big ticket deals, and the rest of the organization wasn't humming to that. And then that created a lot of issues because we'll get into kind of late stage pipeline, and we wouldn't have the product features or security measures that they needed to get to kind of get that through. So I think the lesson from that was like there has to be alignment across all C-suite as to the direction of the company, rather than sales just taking a swing at it and being like, okay, let's go. And I think this is why a lot of VPs and CROs getting a lot of like muddy waters, because they sign up to stuff that they haven't got the full backing across multiple teams. So that was one. And then what else did we like? I suppose one of the biggest lessons, and I think this was really important, was this was probably about 4 years ago. Like we didn't really have like a defined ICP. Like we were just kind of signing anything. And I think as an organization grows, and it grows 100% year on year, like if you have a leaky bucket, that puts so much pressure on the organization, particularly new business, to kind of counteract that, to keep them growth rates going. And kind of what we've done at that point, when we did experience quite high churn back then. Like we really put focus on okay, let's look at the data, let's look at what accounts are actually renewing, what is upselling. And then from there, like we were able to kind of point the resources on those particular segments. And the end result was like 3 years from there, when we started pivoting, like our renewal rates went through the roof. We had like really high ACVs, and we weren't in that mess that could have potentially like really impacted the business at future funding rounds.
Brilliant. So it seems like really defining that ICP was kind of a mistake you made, but really learned from quickly, and just lack of alignment really across all of the departments in the business, which again, the failures have allowed you to learn and change things moving forward.
I think it helped. Oh, sorry, Carl. I was going to say, like,
no, go for it.
It helped to have a broad ICP to begin, like for us, because we had an agnostic product. So it helped to have a lot of customers across multiple different like sectors, because then we could actually draw data from that. So it was a negative that we were doing it because it was hurting us a little bit, but then it was also a positive because we could take that data and then like really know what was a good fit for us.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my point, because the product of Cognism, loads of businesses could use it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're the ideal customer. So I'm just thinking, for anyone listening to this that's maybe experiencing that pain of, we're selling, but we don't necessarily know who our ideal customer is. Yeah. Maybe what advice can you share from your experience on how they can really refine that ICP down a little bit within their business?
Yeah, so the way that we done it is like, this was very early, but like when we brought on new hires, we'll give them autonomy on like I believe it was about like 50% of their account list would say, okay, go find and test other like industry verticals. So 50% would be core defined, that would come from leadership. So for us at that time, it was like events and recruitment. That was like a really, really good ICP for us. We knew that we had very consistent win rates, ACV. And then what we done is we gave that kind of freedom to the reps. And then once we started signing these more like left field organizations, like we would then be able to gather data and say, okay, that's got very good correlation to what a good fit ICP is. And then we would transfer that into kind of a core segment that we would go after.
Yeah, got it. We've spoken about a couple of the things then that maybe didn't work on that journey, but to get to, again, 90 mil ARR, 5 to 500 and your own personal journey, a lot must have gone right. So what would you say are maybe you don't necessarily have to limit it, but the 2 or 3 things that really stood out that meant the journey was so much of a success?
Yeah, I think the first one, and this comes back from like very, very early in like when we started, like we had an advisor called like Nick Keating come in, and he was just super numbers. Like this was before I kind of had that concept of like, okay, like modeling and how to actually scale an organization. But like we were laser focused. Like every single month we would have like pipeline build, SQOs, like meetings generated, like all of that was like religiously documented. And every single month we would go in, identify like where we were pacing versus that. And then we also had triggers that would, if we hit those numbers, that would then kind of kick off the next hiring batch that we would have. So like we made sure that we had the sales capacity to hit our numbers that we forecast. And it was just extremely mathematical. And that really is kind of the art of how we kind of scale Cognism. Like when we knew that things were going good, we would put foot on the gas, hire, make sure that we got the TAM for that. And then it's very much the predictable revenue like model to an extent. Obviously that changed a lot as the company grew, but that's kind of how we kind of done that. And once we had consistency in numbers, that would kind of be the catalyst to like open up new regions as an example. That's kind of how we kind of scaled out internationally as well. So that was one thing that was really, really good. And the second thing I think there's like the tenure in sales is like historically like very low, right? Like 2 to 3 years max average that you're probably going to get in a good sales rep. I think one of the key things at Cognism as to why we were really, really successful is like we retained a lot of our reps for 5-6 year cycles. And I think organizations really underplay like how much that specialist knowledge like differentiates in competitive environments. And if you look at the top performers in the organization, like are they playbook reps that are following it to the code? No, they're not. Like they're the reps that have sold this product hundreds of times and they know when to put foot on the gas and maybe miss a step or slow down a step. And like your A players are likely not going to be like repeatable reps. And I think that kind of level of performance that comes after like a very, very good stint at an organization. And for us at Cognism, we were up against ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo's at peak, it was like a $16 billion valued business, right? And to be able to like de-seat them, like you need to have exceptional reps. And I think that was one of the key things that we had that really made a difference. And like one thing, Carl, as well, like just to know, like there was another company, and this is where I think that kind of like sales focus and go-to-market focus in terms of like the modeling like really helps. So there's a company called Growbots that you probably never heard of. They were the biggest European like very similar to Apollo Cognism, and we were about 2 years behind them when we started. We literally copied their products to an extent. Like we had the sequence of the data. All we done was we applied like a really, really good go-to-market engine behind it. And then I think probably 4 years after that, like you said, like you don't know who they are anymore, right? And they were one of the fastest growing companies, right? So I think the product, it's important to have a good product that you can sell that matches, but it's so important to have such a good go-to-market engine. Right.
Love it. I think it's key in reinforcing like why sales is such an important and great career as well, because that example of Growbots, I'd never heard of them before, and you can have the best products in the world if you don't have a team and the reps to be able to sell it. It's kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter too much. So the 2 things you mentioned there is kind of the numbers. Mathematically, it sounds like it was a really well-oiled machine, but also the retention piece as well, which is no secret. A lot of businesses and sales orgs will struggle with that. So you kind of retain people 5-6 year cycles, which is longer than the industry average. How did you manage to do that and keep people engaged and staying with the business for a number of years?
Yeah, I think like if you look at Cognism today, like the like every single, well, it's just giving people a career path, right? Like that was a key thing. It's like, can you translate that career path to the rep that they can easily understand? And it's like case studies of individuals in the organisation that have achieved that, so it becomes a realistic objective for them. So like I'll give you some examples of some that we had. So like Ben Mouquet like runs our French team. Started as an SDR in the organisation. Was also our highest, the rep that signed the highest ACV deal. Signed like a $3 million contract. So like we had the case studies of those individuals that we were able to promote up within. Our entire SMB A team came from the SDR function. That was just a policy that we had, that we hired from SDR. So it was very much from day one when you come into the org. If you work hard, if you put your numbers up, and obviously we have the opportunities that arise, but like first dibs always goes internally, then external, and that just worked. And we had Ben running France. We have like a lot of our enterprise reps came from kind of our SDR function. And now they're earning great money, and I'm sure very, very happy.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I know Ben as well, relatively well actually. So Ben, if you're listening, shout out to you. Keep fighting the good fight, Ben. So that's the retention piece. And I think the key thing is that almost internal validation in case studies, that actually if I work hard, there is someone there that has done what I'm looking to achieve. So I think having that clear career pathways is really important, but also the evidence as well. Coming back onto the first point then with the numbers, religiously documented, I think was the phrase that you used. But what are the key numbers and metrics then that you would track that kind of led to how predictable, getting to 90 million ARR was?
Yeah, I think like really at the early stage when we didn't have like a team of RevOps or like 5 people, right? Like it was literally just us. Like it's a really basic stuff. It's like, what's your call to connect rate? What's your connect rate to meeting? Do the same for emails, and you just track that, right, amongst the reps. And then your MA, what's your MA to SQO? That was probably the biggest one that we really harped on, was like once a meeting's attended, like what percentage of that is actually turning into a qualified opportunity. And we would have a basis of how many qualified opportunities we would need each month to get the output that we needed on revenue, to then obviously get future funding rounds and kind of grow the team. So that was one. And then the more granular aspects of that when we started was looking at kind of like industry verticals and company size, like what are the win rates that we're getting across those. And then when the team's so small, it's literally like, what accounts do we give them? Like, are the accounts we give them going to translate into revenue or not? And that's kind of the data was kind of pushing us as to what accounts we should go after. Obviously, as it evolved, it got a lot more detailed, right? Like we would have pipeline targets per segment. We would have like sales, like average pace that a sale would go through at each stage, and like you get into the real granular stuff. But I think if sometimes you overdo it and you put too many numbers in front of the reps, and it confuses them. They don't know what the core ones are. So I think from my perspective, like just have like a really good basis points of like what are the core KPIs that you want to measure, what's your North Star as well, and then just make sure that the team are aligned to that and they know what that is.
Yeah. Cool. And we've spoken a bit then around kind of the key things that have led to the success and the growth journey over the years. And you mentioned funding rounds as well. We're going to be talking about funded investment very soon in the next part of the conversation. But from a personal perspective then, you've gone from being an SDR, team of 5, probably very much in the trenches, to being a global leader at this business that probably look very different now to what it did when you were employee number 5. What's that journey been like for you, going from kind of an SDR into a global leader, manager? Because a lot of people listening to this, that's probably a journey that they're looking to emulate themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I think like first things first, like there's a hell of a lot of imposter syndrome when you jump up to kind of the next stage, and I think that was probably the biggest thing that was not hurdle, but like that was like myself just believing that I had the ability to do that, right? So but yeah, I think like going through those natural levels, I think the benefit is, and this came from my CEO, which was absolutely superb. Like during his journey as well, like he always had a mentor at the next stage of what as the company grew in different funding rounds, like there was always a mentor that he had that he relied on. And for like the core leadership team that he had, like he would make sure that we would have a mentor for the next stage of the journey that we were on. So when I first got promoted to kind of managing a global team, I got a mentor through one of our lead VCs. It was Adam Liebman. I still speak to Adam a lot. Like he's superb. Like he gave me such good advice just on like real basic stuff like internal politics and how to manage that and fight for your budget and all that kind of stuff, right? On top of like how do you actually scale the team and what attributes change as you grow. But I think like if you're looking to kind of make that next step up, firstly start doing that role a little bit before, take some of the weight off your manager. And secondly, like try and get a mentor who is at that level that you want to get to, and just bounce ideas off them, because like it's great to have someone internal, but like there's always nuances to internal mentors. Like it's always good to have an outside perspective on stuff.
Yeah, brilliant, great advice. And I want to transition the conversation now onto funding, investment, and I know you set up the Revenue Syndicate a little while back. But before we go into that, I'm keen to talk a little bit around the funding that you talked about at Cognism, and that it seems like there was always the cycle building up to an event or a funding round, and then maybe there'd be a change in direction again. But what was that like internally, and how do businesses, as someone with little experience, kind of gear up to try and get that funding, and what's it then like post funding?
Yeah, I think it like there's cycles and waves, right, as to like how VCs like identify like high growth organizations and what that looks like. Over the last like 3 years, and this is more from our Revenue Syndicate lens, but we saw this at Cognism as well. It's like that kind of growth at all costs versus kind of sustainable growth and kind of that kind of push towards profitability. That's been like that has been a focus point as we've gone through future rounds. So like metrics like GDR, NDR, your burn rate, like your top line growth that you're experiencing, all of those numbers, bar like top line growth, which has always been really important, they've probably had a little bit more importance over the recent funding rounds. And then also, actually, this one's like a big one, is like revenue per head. Like that, I think over time, that has become like one of the core metrics that VCs are looking at for late stage organizations. Is like, and you see this with the likes of like Lovable popping up now and all these kind of AI first companies that just have absolutely astronomical revenue per employee. And I think there's only a finite amount of money out there that gets distributed. Well, there's an abundance of money at the moment that's on the sidelines, but VCs want to put their money into stuff that has low operating costs and has very high margins. And you could say there's a lot of like legacy dead 100 million ARR companies that are just floating at the moment that don't have high growth of 40% plus anymore. They're low 20s with high burn, and like you're kind of seeing that kind of, we're seeing a lot of M&A at the moment because a lot of these companies are getting acquired or likely in the next couple of years likely go under, right? So like it's a very interesting time for kind of late stage companies, like trying to get that profitability and headcount to that good level. And then early stage is kind of the reverse of that, right? Which I just said, which is just, can you build a really lean team and get revenue quick?
Yeah. Well, let's move into investing then, because there's quite a few interesting concepts and terminology and jargon you utilise there. But the Revenue Syndicate then you set up a couple of years ago, a few years ago now. Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's three of us that kind of set us up. So Hector, who I worked with at Cognism, he was one of the early employees. He's now a founder of a company called Fluencer. So he's always kind of had that entrepreneurial like drive. But the reason like we kind of set that up initially was so when we were at Cognism, we got pitched by ReachDesk. We're very early. It was literally about 4 of us in the team, and like we found out that we were going to procure the software, and we also found out at the time that they were going through their kind of seed funding rounds, and we just asked. We were like, "Hey, Alex, is it possible if we can jump in your rounds if there's any chance of any chance that is?" We didn't even know if that was like a possibility at the time, right? And Alex was great. Like he actually let us into the round. We had like 5 of the employees went in, and like 5 years later, that investment was like, it was crazy. Like the returns on it was just astronomical. And me and Hector sat down and we were like, oh my God, like how can we build something that allows other people to kind of get access to kind of the UK ecosystem. And I think so many of us spend so much time like building these companies, and we come across like brilliant organizations, and we miss that mark in terms of like actually putting our capital to these organizations to help them grow. So yeah, that was kind of the reason why I done it, is I wanted to kind of I wanted to open up this asset class to people and allow people to actually potentially make life changing amounts of money. And well, I'm sure we'll go into this. There's so many benefits of angel investing, like network, tax breaks. There's just a multitude of stuff that makes it so beneficial for people to dabble and kind of build not a huge amount, but like have a portfolio of early stage companies.
Yeah. Okay. And I think the tagline you've got on your LinkedIn as well, to do with Revenue Syndicate, is helping salespeople build wealth beyond their paychecks, which I think is a great mission and a great tagline. But you mentioned then angel investor. There'll be people listening to this that have probably heard of that phrase before, but we don't have a clue what it means.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So an angel investor is so typically like a venture-backed organization, like the equivalent of getting venture money, which is like I don't know what's a good example of like any VC, like a VC money, right? An angel is just an individual. So rather than coming from a organization, you're a sole person, and you go in with your check and you join that round, right? And I think a lot of early stage businesses, it's much easier to get in as an angel investor because like it's usually very small size round they're looking to complete. So you can get in with quite small tickets. When you get to your Series C, Series D, you're talking multi-million investments, right? And at that point, like you've got a very little chance of being able to invest unless you go through a syndicate or go through a fund. But yeah, an angel investor is basically just an individual who invests in like VC-backed organizations.
Yeah. So basically, angel is a person. So that makes it a lot easier to understand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where then does the Revenue Syndicate come in to help kind of facilitate with that process?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest thing in VC is like finding the right companies, right? Like what are the companies of tomorrow that are going to be successful? And like I think just from experience of like doing this now for 3 years, like the best deals do not become available to the general population. So you can put on your LinkedIn that you're an angel investor, you're going to get a lot of decks coming through. The best deals are kind of pre-agreed before they even get announced, or like there's people queuing up to invest in these companies, like second-time founders or operators from like extremely successful companies like Palantir, etc. Like they go like that. So like for an angel investor, like you need to firstly have very good deal flow. So there's multiple good syndicates that are out there. Like Founders Capital is a great one for founders. Revenue Syndicate's a great one for kind of revenue and go-to-market professionals. Alpha Graph's a great one that's run out of Notion, again for operators. All of these have connections to VCs as well. So we partner with and we run deals with the likes of Playfair, A16Z, some very big funds, right? And obviously once as a collective, there's much more power than as an individual, and like the deal flow that you're likely to get from a syndicate is much greater. And also the other aspect of this as well is angel investments are typically like, if you go back 3-4 years ago, like the minimum ticket you could invest was 20k per investment. And I don't know about you, but like that's ridiculous. Like it's crazy, right? You could do like probably one deal every 5 years. Whereas with a syndicate and with technology now that's come out, like companies like Odin, that has really lowered the barrier, so people can invest like 1k tickets in every single round that kind of comes up. And that goes back to an earlier point which I did make, which is like the diversity of having a big portfolio. That really helps when you can lower the minimums. So yeah, that's one of the benefits of syndicates and companies like Odin that allow everyday investors to not put crazy amounts of money into one single investment.
Brilliant. Thanks for the explainer as well. And I'm going to try and ask the questions now that maybe if I was a salesperson listening to the podcast, I would probably want to know the answer to. So One of them was the minimum amount, as you just mentioned, there, around £1,000. Let's say that I was going, oh, Jonathan, but what if I invest £1,000? I've got rent to pay, I've got bills, it's a bit of a risk, and the business goes bust. What happens then?
Yeah, that's a good. It's a good question, right? Like, none of this is financial advice, by the way. I do need to say
Disclaimer.
that. But like, the UK government is very, very good. Like, we probably have one of the best tax schemes around early stage investing. So if you invest in UK-based companies, there's two schemes that you get. It's SEIS and EIS. SEIS is for kind of pre-seed, like in really simplistic terms, it's kind of pre-seed companies, so very, very, very early. And then EIS is kind of up to probably around like Series A. The benefits of those two schemes, so for SEIS, you get 50% of your original investment back through your tax return. So if you do a tax return every year, 50% of whatever you invest in that company you'll get back on SEIS. And then EIS, you'll get 30% back. And then the benefit as well, if they go on to be very, very successful, you get a massive reduction on capital gains tax as well. So any profit that you make on those investments is capped at, I believe, like 10%. So there's real benefits in that regard. And then for the losses that you get, like there is loss relief as well. So you can get, I believe it's 30%. Yeah, 30. I think it's about 30. Yeah, 30% loss relief that you can get on those investments as well if they're EIS. So there is risk associated with it for sure. It's a very risky asset class, but there's also like that kind of incentive to get you to invest in it.
Okay. And yeah, I think we've got to get the disclaimer. And this is not financial advice.
It's definitely not financial advice.
There'll be a lot of curious salespeople though that do want to learn more about this. So one thing we're really passionate about, and we've had people on the podcast before talk around financial education. I think it's not talked about enough, and it's so important. Yeah. And a lot of people in sales might be going on, putting money into my pension, I've got my stocks and shares ISA, I've got my emergency fund, whatever it may be. They might be going, Jonathan, why should I now do angel investing as well? What are the benefits to me? I'm already doing all of these other things.
Yeah, it's just it's a diversified asset class, right? So it's like the tax breaks that you get with your pension relief, like it's a similar tax relief that you're likely to get with EIS investments. And there's other things that you can do as well, like VCTs are another great one that offer good tax relief as well. But yeah, it shouldn't, like from my experience and the way that I kind of manage my portfolio, like it's a low percentage of like my total investments, but it's still a percentage, because I think that when you land a great organization, like you can get 100x returns on that, right? So and I experienced that at Reach Desk at a point, like it was incredible. Like you can get some really, really like nice returns. So I think it's a great. The other thing as well, like for salespeople to do this, like there's a financial benefit, but then there's also just the benefit of being in the ecosystem and actually getting to know the founders of tomorrow. So many of our community have gone on to work at these organizations that they've invested in. They've built really good connections with these founders, and naturally it's made like really, really good connections for their career.
Yeah, interesting. I like it. And in terms of kind of your plans for the business, where do you see Revenue Syndicate going?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like my objective is that we can like be in nearly every. We don't do big tickets. We do like 50 to 60k tickets. So it's a small amount generally of like a company's allocation. But like we want to be there to help guide the companies of tomorrow. Like one of our ethoses is when you become a member and you invest, like you dedicate time to help that organization with whatever specialties and expertise you've got. So we really want to make sure that the companies coming out the UK have that support and backing, that they can get to the next phase and they can compete with kind of the big US organizations.
Love it. And you mentioned it around the kind of ticket value, obviously looking to get in early stage. Let's say you've got members of the syndicate or people that are listening to this that are just a little bit curious, but they wouldn't know where to start. What are the key things to look for maybe in an early stage startup that would be kind of green flags in terms of looking to get a future return on any angel investment?
That's a really good question. That's a really, really good question. Like, I think there's a couple of areas, like domain expertise, like has that founder actually got experience in the space that they're working in? Like some of the best investments I've done have just come from actually my network, just just knowing the founder and knowing like their work ethic and like their drive for success, like that for early stage, that's like absolutely 101 is like the founder themselves. Like, are they just a bright spark that can do anything and pivot and create an amazing business? So founders number one, markets the second one. And then the team, like, have they got a good team that's sitting around them? Like, have they got a good technical lead that's sitting alongside them? Have they founded a company before? Is this their second time that they're doing this? And I think the data on stuff like that, like second time founders that are going out to create something again, like it's astronomical the rate of which those companies like grow and get high returns. So there's a few different things that you can look at. But the best thing to do is like go into a syndicate, like observe, like you don't need to invest, but just observe of what companies are coming out, look at the pitch decks, and then kind of build your own thesis as to like what's important to you. Like you might have very deep domain expertise in one particular area, and if you join a syndicate that pushes that through, you're going to have a natural advantage over other VCs that don't have that domain expertise, right? So like know what your knowledge is and try and transfer that to your investment thesis.
Yeah, brilliant. Good advice. Final couple of bits, Jonathan, to touch on. It's a bit of a buzzword at the minute, AI, isn't it? But I'm very interested as someone that's been in a business that probably looks very different now to what it did do all those years ago. What do you think the future of sales, the SDR and AE roles looks like in your opinion?
That's a really good question.
It's a big question.
It's a big question, but it's really, really important because there are so many AI SDR companies that are popping up right at the moment. So, like my view on it is, I'm kind of in the middle in terms. I'm not sitting on the fence because I think there is benefit of AI SDRing to some capacity, right? Do I think it's going to be universally rolled out? No. Like it's going to amplify, like a co-pilot that helps salespeople is going to be the solution to this, I believe. And we see it with like outreach and sales loft, right? Like something new comes along that's automating some part of the process. Naturally, buyers get turned off to it after a set period of time, right? So there'll be that first wave of like real excitement over like AI calling, and it will get really good returns to begin with, and then naturally adoption will go high, and then buyers will just completely be tuned out to it. So that's how I kind of see that AI calling going. In terms of like just general AI in sales, like there's so many amazing use cases, right? Like research, like compiling proposals, and like like just that the legwork that sales guys have to do, that can be automated completely, and that's that kind of co-pilot. And then for enterprise sales, I think that like you need a human. Like there's no way you can't, like the project management aspect of having to manage 30, 40 people, coordination, face-to-face engagement. And I think you see this with, who was it recently just signed that massive deal? I think it was Cisco with OpenAI. They just signed like a 30 billion cloud contract with them. Big legacy company, right? But like the reason they signed that is because they've got that enterprise sales motion built with humans, and they're experts at managing that project aspect of it. And that won't go away with AI. Like AI calling and emailing is not going to fix that.
Yeah, I agree. And final question, Jonathan. What's next for you?
Good question. I'm going to take a bit of time. Like I've been grafting for 8 years, so I'm going to take a bit of summer, enjoy for a bit, and then probably go into the kind of space that you're talking about, Carl. Like I think it's really is the most exciting time in tech, probably in like the last like 15 years. Like there's that whole new wave of organizations coming out in kind of the AI application layer and the model layer. Like there's some really, really exciting stuff coming out. So yeah, take a bit of time and then try and find that next unicorn and help build it.
Love it. Well, all the best. Enjoy your time out, Jonathan. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and thank you again for joining us.
Likewise. Appreciate it, Carl. Thank you.
Cheers.